Good Friday morning of the 25th week. As you can see, the surroundings are somewhat different, and there's a reason for it. I'm in the confessional. It's a half hour before Mass, 45 minutes before Mass, and we have here at St. Mark's, we have a program where we hear confessions a half hour before every Mass, weekdays, Sunday, etc. So we'll see. If somebody comes in, all of a sudden this little party's over. I can't keep talking. Hear the confession, whatever. Anyway, today's reading is the Gospel. I'm sticking with Luke. The Old Testament readings they are really beyond me. In the sense, I don't know. I don't know. It's beyond me. Anyways, it's Luke. Remember it? It's interesting. It's all get out. Luke is talking to Gentile Christians. You see, you got to always keep that in mind. Who's he talking to? Once, when Jesus was praying in solitude and the disciples were with him, he asked them, "Who do the crowd say that I am?" The crowd always refers to the Jews. Okay. They said in reply, John the Baptist. He asked them, "Who do the crowd say?" They said in reply, "John the Baptist, others Elijah, and he's still others. One of the ancient prophets has arisen." And he said to them, remember, these are the apostles, "Who do you say that I am?" Okay. Peter says in reply, "The Christ of God." And he rebuked them and directed them not to tell this to anyone. He said, "The Son of Man must suffer greatly and be rejected by the elders, the chief priests and the scribes, the Jews, and be killed, and on the third day be raised." That's the great formula. But who is he? He said, "The Son of Man must suffer greatly, be rejected by the elders, by the Jews." Now, here's a very important, because he's telling they're rejected. Christ is rejected by the Jews, hence why it goes to the Gentiles. That's the great teaching of St. Paul. See? It's interesting. The lines before that are really, really interesting. When he says, once when Jesus was praying, he said to them, wait a minute, excuse me, I'm sorry, "Who do the crowd say that I am?" They said in reply, "John the Baptist, others Elijah." See, those are Jews. And yet, they don't believe. See? The kicker line here is the Christ of God. He rebuked them and directed them not to tell this to anyone. That's, I believe, is the church at the time of Luke is writing this, is struggling with the fact that the Jews were not converted. See, it's called, I remember the German words, the Messiah's Geheimnis, the Messiah Geheimnis, the Messianic secret. The Messianic secret. They were trying to struggle in the early church with understanding why especially the Jewish world, failed to see Christ and to believe. They saw that he might be a prophet, they even thought maybe it's Elijah come back to life, but what they didn't see him for is for who and what he was, the reality of who and what is Christ, you see. And they don't blame them. Here they say the Messianic secret. He wasn't preached to. Somehow the church, the apostles didn't preach to them. That's the line. It must, okay? So he rebuked them and directed them not to tell this to anyone, that he was the Christ. How else can you explain it? Meanwhile, back at the ranch, you have the great scandal, which is what? The Son of Man must suffer greatly and be rejected by the elders. In other words, you stay silent about it because I have to be rejected in order for me to be preached to the Gentiles. See? Be rejected by the elders, the chief priests and scribes, and be killed, and on the third day be raised. The Messianic secret. Okay? That the great mystery, Christ must die and rise. That is the redemptive action. It wouldn't occur if the Jews saw him for who and what he was. So the reason he has not preached the Messianic secret is so that two things. One, he can be crucified. His mission is to be, this is for what he's called to be, to die on the cross and rise. The great story of the Messiah. Christ must die and rise, you see. The Paschal mystery, the great mystery of Christ, the Lamb of God being sacrificed for the redemption of humankind and preached to the Gentiles. It's both. The great story of Christ's death and resurrection, the hope of redemption itself in the flesh, you see, now preached to the Gentiles. I think that's the whole thing. If they went out and were able to tell the world before the Paschal, before the Good Friday, Easter Sunday, then of course there would have been no Easter Sunday. There would have been no Good Friday. They would have made him a king. Instead, they crucified him. It's because he was not preached that they didn't see. The Jews did not see, and the elders did not see who he was. And by not seeing who he was, they crucified him. But in the crucifixion, Christ redeems all of humanity, including and especially the Gentile world. I think that's what the whole point of it in Luke's gospel. His combination of the Jewish rejection was necessary for the passion of Christ to occur, but also for the passion of Christ to be preached, the great story to be preached to the Gentile world. I think it's a combination of both, and I think it's where we are today. We are preaching the crucified Christ to the world today. Maybe due to divine providence and the historical events that have occurred over the last 500, 600 years. Perhaps Christianity had to die in the West to become global. As long as it was Eurocentric, it would remain Eurocentric, a European religion, a Mediterranean religion, with a stepson called America, okay? But for it to be global, perhaps, in the light of divine providence, Christianity had to die in the West to be born in the East. Just as Jewish Christianity, in a sense, had to die in order for it to become Gentile Christianity. I don't know the right words for it. St. Paul had to be rejected, and he is rejected. And so he goes and preaches to the Gentiles, see, and changes the world. If he stayed in Jerusalem, Christianity would have been a subset of Judaism, probably a prophetic movement within Judaism. By the fact it was kicked out, it became a global religion. He preached to the Roman world, the global community, as did St. Peter, you see. It's the rejection that leads to the globalization. And I think it's exactly what's happening now in our world. As Christianity is rejected in the West, it grows in the East. And the focal center will move from Eurocentrism to Asian centrism. It'll shift to Asia, and in that it'll globalize. We live in I know I keep saying I beat this thing to death, but I believe it. We live in the second greatest age of the church. The first was the apostolic age, leading to its Romanization under Constantine in the 4th century. We're in the greatest period since in the 4th, 5th century, when the church became Roman. Now it's becoming global. And it's precisely at this time because it's being rejected by the West. It's now becoming global through the East, who will re-evangelize the West. That's what's going to happen. They're going to have missionaries. We already have them. When you look at who's populating the priests and religious in your communities, how many of them are literally African and Asian who are coming here to maintain the church and to re-evangelize it? I look at my own order, my own passionate community. Our hope isn't here in the West. Our hope is in the East and in Africa, the Caribbean, the so-called third world. Third, I don't know what world it is, but whatever it is, it's energizing the order. We still have a tomorrow, just like the church has tomorrow. And the tomorrow has an Eastern slant to it, I think. I think Asia is the future of Christianity and therefore the globalization of the faith.